In this illustration we are going to start at 3:30 a.m. At this time everyone is asleep except Zonner. Looking inside of the home, we can see where everybody was. Starting at the third floor, we can see where Maddie and Kaylee were sleeping. Maddie was sleeping at the edge of the bed, while Kaylee was sleeping near the wall. As we go out and drop down to the second floor, we can see Dylan's room directly under Maddie's room. Continuing across the living room onto the other side of the home, we see Zonner's room. She is sitting, scrolling on her phone, while Ethan sleeps next to her. Minutes ago, she had just finished ordering DoorDash and has all the lights on while she waits. The last roommates to mention is Beth, whose room is on the first floor directly below the living room, as most of them all sleep. Kohberger pulls into the neighborhood for the first time this night, at precisely 3:30 a.m. We know this due to a home security camera that captures the intersection and records the coming and going of anybody that enters that neighborhood. Kohberger drove past the home and notices that all the lights on the second floor are still on. He drives on and loops around the apartment complex building. Because of the home security timestamp, we are able to know how long it took to drive this path. On his first parse, it took him 2 minutes and 38 seconds, and this is him leaving on his first parse. Now let's look at this next 2 parses and record the times. This is parse 2 of him entering and leaving. And now this is parse 3 of him entering and leaving. When we do the math, we can see how long he took each parse. The last 2 parses were normal without any stopping. But in his first parse he took an additional 42 seconds to creep by the house or even stop for a time to stare into the windows with the lights on. This camera allows us to see how long it took to get from point A to point B, and between the 3 security cameras' data. It took between 35 and 37 seconds. What this means is he did not stop or park somewhere or go into a different direction. He simply drove straight from point A to point B at regular speed. These times help us understand the DoorDash delivery window. Accounting to court documents, 2 times are noted. One is 3:59 a.m. and the other is 4 a.m. Bringing back our parses chart, we can see that the DoorDash time of 3:59 a.m. happens after Kohberger has left the neighborhood and before he returns for his last parse at 4:04 a.m. If it's possible, the DoorDash driver saw Kohberger as he was parking his car, because the timestamp of 3:59 am could be reflected when he took the photo of the food at the front door, instead of the time he arrived. So it is possible he witnessed Kohberger staring at the windows as he drove by. As the driver leaves, Zonner turns off all the lights, sits in her bed, and scrolls on her phones as she eats her food. A few minutes later, Kohberger enters the neighborhood for the last time. But this time, as he drives by the home, he sees all the lights are off. At the camera B location, he turns around to head back to the residence as shown in this video. When he returns to the front of the house, he does something unusual, so much so that it is noted in the arrest affidavit. On page 6, it states when the suspect vehicle 1 is in front of Kings Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. It goes on to say that he continued into the intersection where he is a 3-point turn. The 3-point turn was captured on camera A, which has a timestamp of 4:06 a.m. He powers to be calm and not overly anxious with his driving. As he heads back in the direction of the residence, he takes one last look at the windows to make sure all lights are off. As he begins to drive around the bed of the apartment complex, camera B records the time of 4:07 a.m. Fast forwarding a little bit, Kohberger drives to the back parking lot away from other residences. He takes a few minutes looking around and sees that nobody's out and that all is quiet. He eventually grabs his things, gets out of the vehicle and begin to walk to the back of the home. At approximately 4:13 a.m., he begins to make entry. As he steps in, he takes a minute to make sure everything is quiet and that nobody is truly up. He walks to the entrance of the living room and looks around. He continues to be cautious and stands there listening. Feeling confident, he continues upstairs. As he makes his way to Maddie's room, the time is about 4:14 a.m. Meanwhile, 2 minutes later, Zonner takes a break from TikTok and walks into the kitchen. Evidence shows her activity on the app stopped at 4:16 a.m. As she enters the kitchen, she's a little shocked to see the sliding glass fort wide open, and at the same time, she hears a serious commotion going on upstairs. When she walked up to Maddie's doorway, she interrupted Kohberger, who had just finished an intense battle with Kaylee, who fought back violently. After a second or two, he noticed her and she turns away. Being dark, Zonner didn't realize what she was seeing other than a shadowy figure. Out of fear, she quickly leaves. A single source, unaffiliated with the media, claims Kohberger injured Zonner on the third flood hallway, leaving evidence of blood there, but the single source of information has not been validated by any other sources. Kohberger, without thinking, pursued her all the way to her room, not realizing he had dropped the sheath of his knife. When he gets to the room, he attacks Zonner and the time is precisely 4:17 a.m. We know this because of camera A captured the sound of screaming and the thud. After attacking Zonner, Kohberger focuses his attention on Ethan and attacks him while he slept. Afterwards, Kohberger must have sat down in the chair, according to report which found blood smears on Zonner's chair, perhaps from the exhaustion of what he had just done. The source also says that blood from the two roommates upstairs were found in Zonner's room, showing that it was one person moving from one room to another. Kohberger sitting down once for less than 30 seconds, as he gets up to leave. Dylan, hearing the commotion from Zonner's room, gets up out of bed and goes to her door to look out into the hallway. She freezes to see Kohberger as he walks by and exits through the kitchen. She immediately closes and locks her door and retreats to her bed. Within 20 seconds of the encounter, she is calling and texting her roommates, but no one is responding. It takes Kohberger a minute and a half after the encounter with Dylan, but once in his car, he flees the scene at a high rate of speed and exits the neighborhood at 4:20 a.m. Dylan continues trying to reach someone in the house. And after 3 minutes of trying, Bethany wakes up and responds to the calls. They converse for 3 minutes and then Beth convinces Dylan to come downstairs. The time is now 4:26 a.m. Cautiously, Dylan walks into the hallway and through the living room. As she approaches the staircase, she can see into Zonner's room and see her lying on the floor. She then runs quickly downstairs to Beth's room, where they locked the door and for several hours continuously trying to contact the other roommates. Back to when Kohberger had left the neighborhood. He drove a particular route that would exit onto a road that leads straight to Washington state line, and about that same time that Dylan runs to Beth's room, Kohberger is entering Washington state. This is all part of Kohberger's pre-planning, including finding a place to stop and get rid of any evidence. This place here fits that planning. This area here pointed out by the arrow is a little grove of trees with a small area you can park a car on. This is what it looks like from the road at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. While changing clothes and getting cleaned up at this location, one could feel completely safe, while being able to see the headlights of a car coming from miles away. As this pivots around, you can see how this is out of the puddle of nowhere, and a pre-dug hole near some of these trees would hide forever any evidence that Kohberger was trying to get rid of. It is important to remember that Kohberger was studying criminal behavior and the legal system. This would have motivated him to plan things to the smallest of details, like plastic on the seats to conceal DNA or crossing states lines, because the jurisdictions of one area would take hours to get assistance from the other. He is also smart enough to know that this 10-minute stop would likely never be on the radars of the authorities, especially after he rode back into Idaho and then turned his phone back on. Let us pick back up where we left off at this 10-minute stop. He continues on with his plan, knowing that he is completely cleaned up and there is no evidence to tie him to any of the crime if he were pulled over at this point. After getting in Highway 95 and turning south, he turned his phone back on at 4:48 a.m. This section of Kohberger's travels comes from a cell phone data extraction. Let us orient ourselves onto this map and get a better understanding of the timing. Kohberger leaves Kings Road residence at 4:21 a.m. Just 8 minutes later, he arrives at his stopping point, where he gets rid of all the evidence. After the cleanup, he then drives back into Idaho and turned his phone back on, which occurs near a town named Bryan. This was referenced in the arrest affidavit, along with the next town called Uniontown. The last place to reference is where he is seen on cameras near his apartment at 5:25 a.m. Using Google tools, we can get accurate timing information. This entire route took 54 minutes. If we add the 10 minutes stopping time to that, it would be an hour and 4 minutes. Now if you add that hour and 4 minutes to the time he left Kings Road, it would equal 5:25 a.m. the same time the camera captures him in the cameras near Washington State University. The last thing to compare is this part of the route, which has a reported time of 38 minutes to drive without any stopping. Bringing back the time record and adding in the second leg information of 38 minutes, we can now add that time to when he turned his phone back on, which was at 4:48 a.m. After adding the 38 minutes to that time, it gives us 5:26 a.m., nearly the same time that was captured on the campus cameras.